This is StewardShift, a show that gives you the tools you need to get the most of your best resources. Your money, your mind, your body, your time.
Welcome back to the StewardShift Show. I'm so excited because we're going to be discussing something today that's near and dear to my heart. And the topic today is business, particularly entrepreneurial business. Today we have a business coach who actually has worn so many hats throughout his career. I really look up to him, and I'm excited to present to you today, Kymone Hinds. Come on, man. So good to see you on, man. Thank you for being here with us, man.
Troy, thanks for having me on, man. When you asked me about doing this, I was honored. I'm glad to be a part of this conversation and the work that you're doing to help people with your finances. So thank you, man, for having me on.
The pleasure is mine. Dude, let's get right into it. So you had a lengthy career as a leader, as a pastor, nonprofit professional, and now you've dedicated your life to being a business coach. What led you to decide that your ministry now at this point in your life is to help other people monetize their own ministry? What happened here?
I'm so glad you said it the way you said it, right? You said my ministry now, because some people might say this, not trying to be insensitive. They say you left ministry, and I've never left ministry, but to your point, I've transitioned in the way I live out that ministry. So just a little background. My first degree is in a business-related field called actuarial science. Worked in that field for 3 years and then felt a call from God to go into congregational ministry. So I went off to school, studied, and as you mentioned, worked for 15 years as a church leader. Did everything from leading a traditional congregation to starting a contemporary congregation that met in a local gym. Also worked with youth, setting up youth programs. But Troy, one of the things I recognize as a hallmark of everything I did in my church work, I was always starting something. I was starting new programs, starting new church, starting this, whatever. And in my last pastoral assignment, I had young adults who were coming to me because they were starting something, right? They were starting new businesses. And as someone who is also led in the church, you also know that people come to you for advice on so many different things that may not always be the Bible, right? In fact, most of the advice I was asked to give wasn't this, like, what does this text mean? And so I was giving them advice. And as I was hearing myself, I recognized, one, I felt like I had some gifting in that area, some God-given wisdom in that area. And two, I felt more people needed to do what some of these young people were doing, taking their God-given skills and abilities and their expertise they developed and moving it out into the marketplace, starting something of their own. And so I started there, helping them. Then I decided, let me get certified as a coach. And then I made a crazy step in 2018 to step away from a full-time job and begin entrepreneurship myself, helping people to get started in the area of entrepreneurship.
Dude, that's a huge jump. And I'm sure scary along the way at some points.
Very scary, right? Like, if there's a time to leave a job, I picked the wrong time, right? Let me just explain what I mean. We had 3 teenagers, and in the organization that I work for, if I stay working for them, there's certain benefits you get when your kids go off to college. Now I have 3 college students, and those benefits, I don't get them, right? And I think this is something for anyone, right? Whatever you are, whether God's call on you is to switch roles, switch jobs, move to cities, start something new. Like, God's timing is never our timing, but it's always perfect. It's always perfect. And when God is really ready to grow you, he moves you out your comfort zone. And so this has been a great journey, a challenging one, but it's been a great one.
You know, it's interesting. You mentioned something just a while ago that you were starting a lot of things as a church leader, as a pastor. And as I think about it, obviously, you know, we have some things in common. I was a pastor for 13 years. And I discovered along the way that a lot of what pastors do is entrepreneurial in nature.
Absolutely.
And so it may not necessarily be the, classic entrepreneurship thing where, they're benefiting financially from it, but pastors start a lot of things in the church or are catalysts for that, for those beginnings. So you're absolutely right. I resonate with what you're saying, man.
For anyone who's leading in any church, right? I think you recognize, man, I do so many things that I may not even see the value of it and how it has benefit in the marketplace. But I think that's one of the things that God's really called me to help people uncover. Hey, man, stop devaluing what you're doing and see how it can really make an impact beyond where you already are.
Yeah, dude, I love it. So I know that there have to be challenges along the way when you're talking with people who maybe they come to you saying, hey, I have this idea in my mind. I think this is a good ministry. Or I have this idea in my mind and I think this could monetize well. But merging the two oftentimes can prove to be challenging in people's minds, merging ministry with monetizing. What kind of challenges have you come across with people trying to rationalize merging those two ideas?
Yeah, you mentioned it's a challenge in people's mind. And the first person that I had to deal with that challenge with was myself. All right. So, Troy, you mentioned my background, pastor. Then I started business coaching. And here's what I did. I tried to scrub every mention of like pastoring from any of my bios, any of the things I put online. I wouldn't mention it. But someone said your vibe attracts your tribe. I realized that people who were coming to me over and over for help in starting something, they weren't only pastors, right? So I want to make that clear. They were people who had a heart for serving others. And to me, that's the definition of ministry. Ministry is serving others, and your particular ministry is how you serve others best. So people kept coming to me. Hey, I'm helping people with their health, and I want to grow this into an income stream and keep the heart of making an impact. Hey, I'm helping men. And so I kept helping them. And so just like you mentioned, coaching is so important. I got into a coaching program, and their thing was, how do you now niche down and say, you're not just a business coach. What makes you special? And so took the exercise of writing down those names of people I work with and what I helped them to do. And it kept coming up: ministry, business, ministry, business. And I resisted. And finally, I had to come to the point of saying, okay, this is what I do. I help people monetize their ministry. Now, have I gotten pushback? Yes, but I was prepared for it because I can relate to people's pushback. Because a lot of us, we feel like if it's ministry, it should be free, right? If it's ministry, it should be free. And so anytime we put any sort of price to it, anytime someone puts a price to what they do for ministry, we think something's wrong with that, something sinful with that. And I think we got to really take a step back and define terms. Ministry, again, is how you serve others best. Now, if the way you serve others best, you're doing it only on the side, you're doing it with no compensation, there becomes a limit to how much you can really serve others. Because you got to do a job, and some people have to do other things to make the income work. And then when you get time, you do the thing that you do to serve others best. But imagine if you can give more of your time to it, you can get better at it, then you're actually able to help more people and help them at an even better level than you're doing now. And then lastly, I'm going to give, I think for so many people, we think if I charge people, then I'm not really helping them. And I make the counter argument. For some things, if you don't charge people, you're not really helping them.
That's right.
There's a Bible verse, and Troy, because this is StewardShift, I'm sure you've used this or talked about this. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also, right? And we sometimes take that the wrong way. We think what I care about, I give to. It's actually the opposite. What I put my money into, my heart follows it. And think about that now from this perspective. If I'm helping someone with their health and it's free, well, they show up when they want to show up. They don't really invest in it. They don't really give their best to it. And so did you really help them? But now if they pay something, they pay attention. Their treasure goes there. Their heart follows. They're showing up for the trainings. They're taking advantage of the lesson plans. They're doing it. And at the end of it, have they been helped? Absolutely. Now, are you able to help more people because they've paid you? Absolutely. And that's what I see, the merging between your ministry and monetization. And for a lot of people, don't feel like you'll lose your heart for it. The fact that you're asking that question means that your heart is in the right place, and continue to keep your heart in the right place.
Yeah. You know, and I think even for like, if we think about ministry in the classic sense of pastoral ministry, you know, sometimes people get kind of up in arms if pastors charge for the services. That's neither here nor there for me. What I am trying to say, most pastors, the vast majority of pastors, get some sort of paycheck.
Yeah.
And so they are literally charging for their service, as they should, you know.
They're already monetized.
So
they just monetized for a paycheck.
That's right. That's right. And forget what, you know, many people might think about mega church ministries and whatnot. Whatever you think about, I'm not here to decide good or bad or anything like that. But that's not the majority of what ministries look like. Most churches and or pastors, let's just say pastors, are bivocational. And when we look at the grand scheme of things, and so ministers have to eat and feed their families as well. No matter what kind of ministry you might consider yourself to be, whether that's a pastoral minister or marketplace minister, you got to feed your family. That's a biblical principle.
That's right.
That is a biblical principle. You have to feed your family.
Yeah. And Troy, I want to just say this. I don't want anyone to walk away from this conversation saying he's talking about pastors. No, I'm talking about you. I'm talking about you. If you are a believer, you have a ministry, because God does not make any believer that he doesn't put a ministry on the inside. And what I'm saying is, I get a chance. I've had a chance to go around to churches. There's so much gifts and abilities that people are sitting on, that I believe one of the ways that we really impact this world is to do more of it through starting some level of entrepreneurship around the thing that we use to serve others best.
Dude, what do you think about, this is just a concept that's kind of been in my mind, but I really want to take this opportunity to ask a business coach a Christian-based business coach, what do you think about people essentially being a pastor in their workplace, whether they're entrepreneurs or not? You know, people who are believers may not necessarily be trained classically to fulfill that pastoral role in that classic sense, but to be a shepherd or a leader right where they are in the marketplace.
Yeah, that's so good. I think you're onto something there, because we've for too long as the church expected people to come to church, right? Like, our forms of evangelism, our forms of witness were all very one place, one person centric. Come to my church, hear my pastor. But Troy, we know the stats, the world, you know, our own two eyes just tell us that is not working anymore. People are not entering our homes, our churches, to just come and sit for an hour, 2 hours on the weekend. But think about the amazing ability you have, that you're going into jobs every day. You're on your own business every day, and you get a chance to bring church to where people are, right? You get a chance to bring the essence of what that means and to live that out. And there's some people who will never come to a church building that, through your way of living, being a good worker, right? Being a good entrepreneur, being a good business owner, being a good student, you get to bring the essence of what it means to be church to them. And they look to you for some sort of guidance and some sort of like compass spiritually. And I think that's an amazing opportunity we have.
Yeah, I'm with that. I'm with it. So why do you think it's necessary for people to create their own ministry opportunities outside of the classic organizational structure? And by classic organizational structure, I mean church.
Sure.
Why is that? Why should that be a thing?
Sure. I think, this thing can go two ways, right? I think the church can be one of the greatest incubators for creativity and the opportunity for people to find their thing. As someone who's grown up in church, you get a chance to test out stuff. They put you on thousands of dollars of equipment, and you got, you're a kid or you're a younger person or new, and they give you a chance to really see what are you good at. And then I think that's one of the beauties of the church that they let people try things. And for most people, I think more people need to learn how to try things so you know what's your thing. But I think one of the things that we make a misnomer is we think my role or my church title, meaning my role, like I'm a deacon, that's my ministry. And sometimes a lot of times that's a misnomer, right? Your ministry might have more connection to your occupation, right? So you're good at finances and you're good at helping people with your finances, and you figure out that's my ministry. I think if we're only tied to what church jobs are, we'll miss a great portion of what people need in the world. And what people need and what our church role is are two different things. So that's why I think it's important for people to figure out what their unique ministry is and then do more of that.
I think that's really, really important. I think that, as you said, it is a misnomer where maybe my position or title in church is the sum of my leadership in the community, when really most people, if we could be honest, only spend maybe 2 hours, as being part of the church body, or actively being part of the church body per week. But how long do you spend at work? We're talking about usually 8 hours a day or so, 40 hours a week. That right there is your circle of influence. Or if you're a student, your circle of influence are those that you're with the most. And those are other students and teachers and whatnot. So, where we are the most is where we have the most impact.
That's good.
And I think that if we look at church or ministry in that way, not just a deacon ministry or what have you, no knock on those things, but your ministry is where you spend the most time, work and school.
I love that.
If we can influence people in those two places, then I think that our ministry will be looked at in a more complete and full way, if that makes sense.
Makes sense. I love that.
So, all right. So eventually you took the plunge. Being a business coach was no longer a side gig for you. This did at some point become a full-time kind of entrepreneur, taking the plunge kind of thing. How did that happen for you? And when do you think it's appropriate for people to do that for their own lives?
Yeah. So I'm going to give you what not to do, right? By telling you my story.
Okay, great. We'll take it.
I think, and Troy, I think you could relate to this. I was working as a pastor, and I wanted to be careful to not start my business too early while I was pastoring, because it might have been looked at unfavorably by some. But I probably shouldn't have been paying attention too much to those who might have been looking unfavorably. But I waited until I got out to really start building my business. And at that time, I was full-time. And, shout out to my wife. She was carrying us with her job while I'm building stuff, while I'm figuring out pricing, while I'm figuring out charging people. Hey, I'm going to charge you $250 to coach you for 3 months. That kind of stuff. And by the way, that's one of the first hurdles that people have to overcome, right? How do you charge for your expertise and your time? And so I jumped out and then started learning to swim. And what I would advise anyone, if you are looking to get into entrepreneurship and you have a job, start while you are on that job. And I know someone might say, look, I don't have a lot of time. Well, use the time you have. So if you wish you had 40 hours and you have 4, figure out what are the activities I need to do in those 4 hours that will help me over time to start my business. And then once you start, then you start making some goals. I want to begin bringing in an extra $500 a month. Start, start modestly. Then $1,000 a month. And then so you raise your numbers. Now, you know what you're bringing in from your particular job. I would encourage people. Now, there's always going to be faith involved. So I'm not here to talk against someone's step of faith. And if anyone feels like God's leading you in a step of faith, that's my disclaimer. Do that. Do what God tells you. But for most of us, build a bridge is what I will say instead of just taking a jump. Build a bridge where here's what I'm going to make. And then once I get to that level, once I hit a certain number, I know I've figured out my market, what I'm selling, so that if I gave more hours to it, I would make up the difference. I don't have to make the exact amount I'm making on my job. Maybe you're doing that. But if I'm making a certain fraction and I know with more hours, I'll get there and beyond, then I say that's the time to make the move. Especially, here's the especially, if what the time you're putting on the job is really holding you back from what you feel called to do and the maximum impact you can have. Now, some people, I know people, Troy, who are doing great on their business and still keep a job. And that's them. Like, if you want to do that, more power to you. But if you realize, hey, this is really stopping me from walking out my purpose and giving the most that I need to give, then build that bridge, get your number, and then transition.
Love it. And it just reminds me of my own journey. One of the things that as I was processing my entrepreneurial journey with my wife, we started processing this. I would say it had been for a few years, kind of a little bit, sort of, kind of, but really for 1 full year, we had been kind of talking about it and processing it. Thankfully, she was on board. So I had a supportive spouse, thank God. But one of her parameters was, hey, Troy, you're going to have to find a way to replace your income. My wife, as most women are, and there's nothing negative about this, most women tend to be very financial security conscious.
Yes.
And so that was part of her thing. You got to replace your income. And I thank God, I with this, sometimes I have this irrational belief in myself and in what I can do. But somehow I thought I could possibly do this, but I didn't realize that it would happen so quickly. And I guess when you kind of set a goal for yourself and say, all right, this is what I'm looking at doing. And, that's at least in the back of your mind. And you just start kind of putting your head down and marching towards that goal. So, by God's grace. And I know that it doesn't happen cleanly and perfectly for everyone. So I don't want anyone in our audience to think that, okay, well, I'm going to replace my income within a year or anything like that. Really, I think my story is probably a bit of an anomaly. That's probably not the average thing. And it's not because I did anything that's like superb. At least I don't think, I think it was just kind of perfect mix of timing and maybe a perfect storm or what have you. But, that I think that, what you're saying, Kymone, is if God is telling you, okay, now it's time, by all means, go by faith.
Yeah.
But I also hear you saying, Kymone, that you have to understand the hazards here.
Sure.
Whether you believe God is calling you to kind of take this plunge without building a bridge first. Even if you believe that, you still need to understand what's at stake, what the hazards are, not for the sake of fear, but just to know, because if you have a family or even if it's just you still got to feed yourself and live somewhere. Those are very godly attributes to take care of yourself and those who are under your watch care. So it only makes sense to me.
Yeah. And faith without works is dead. And I think for us, you're going to be talking about, I'm building a business. You got to have some proof of concept, something like, what is it that you're selling? What is the income that you're going to bring in if you're making that step of faith?
Obviously, Kymone, what you're sharing with us has been chewed on. It's been developed a whole lot. I'm sure probably over the course of years, but definitely it's evident that this is rooted in scripture as well. Is there any scripture or story or anything like that that's especially meaningful to you that you'd like to share with the audience?
Yeah, Troy, this is a story. If you wake me up at 3:00 in the morning, this is my story that I believe God has called me to live out in terms of what my role is. So there's a story in 2 Kings chapter 4 from verse 1 to verse 7, where the prophet Elisha, who is now the one who succeeded Elijah, a widow comes to him and she presents a financial need. She said, listen, my husband was one of the sons of the prophets, right? He served you, he served God, but he's dead now. And in those days, understand her telling him that her husband died is not just the end of her life partner's life, and it's not just a romance thing, a love thing, but it's financial income. Like there's no pension plan, there's no government assistance. He is her source of income, and he's dead. And not only is he dead, but there's debt that they're in, right? We're talking about finances here. He's left, and now she has to deal with the debt. And the story is that the creditors have come and they're saying, listen, we know that your husband's dead, but you have 2 sons. So we're going to take them to make them slaves so they can work off the debt. And so that's to me where a lot of people live today. Not maybe losing a loved one, but in debt, and it's threatening their present and their future. That's where a lot of people live. A lot of people who come to our churches, a lot of believers, most of our prayers are, God, help me with my finances, right? In some way, shape, or form. And she comes to Elisha, and this is what I love, Troy, about this story. Elisha, who is, amazing in terms of the miracles he performs, he doesn't collect an offering from the whole school of the prophets, right? He doesn't do that. Neither does he produce a miracle without her participation. But he asks her this question: what do you have in your house? In essence, what he helps her do is take what she has to start a business. That's the story that I believe God has called me to live out, because more and more people sitting in our churches who are sitting on oil, because that's what she had in her house, oil. And oil, think about this. If you're thinking about in Bible times, oil is used for anointing of prophets, priests, and kings. Oil is used in the sanctuary. Oil has a spiritual purpose, but he's telling her now to move it out into the marketplace. And I think that's the same lesson, that what you might use in one place in a ministry context can be monetized in the marketplace. And so I use that story as a springboard to help people understand, one, you need to discover your oil. Like, you have to discover the thing that is uniquely yours. And oil, and I'm just going to give it to your viewers here, Troy. Oil is we get oil from what's planted, what's grown, and what's pressed. And for all of us, our oil is something that God might have planted in us. You grew it through your training, and it's pressed out of you through life. And so that's your oil. But then he tells her to develop it in a way that people will buy it from you. They're not going to just buy it if it's in your jar. You got to put it into different vessels. And so how do I package what I have in a way that people say, yes, I'll pay you for that? And then lastly, he tells her, go sell the oil. Go sell the oil. And that's the step where you now move out into the marketplace and offer it for sale. And that's at the end of that story, she's able to pay her debt and live off the rest. And I believe the church today is called to do the same, to help families, not just collect offerings, right? Not knocking any of that, not just to get people out, but to empower them to use what they have to start streams of income.
Because everyone has something.
Everyone.
Right? Even if it's a little bit, some people have a lot. But
yeah.
Everyone has some God-given talent, skill, education. You have a body, you have a mind, you have a ministry, you have something. So everyone is eligible. Entrepreneurship isn't just for the select few. Now, mind you, I believe, and maybe you can correct me, entrepreneurship also isn't for everyone. Also, is that okay to recognize that?
Sure.
But everyone does have the ability or something that they can use possibly to go down that route.
Absolutely. And I think you make a good point. Like, I think everyone has something. Now, looking at our story, the lady, when she's asked, what do you have in your house? Her first answer, Troy, is, your servant has nothing except a small jar of oil, right? So many of us, our something is something we overlook. It's not a big deal.
She minimized it.
Yeah, she minimized. Like, someone might say, you know what? I can't help people with their finances. Like, Troy, my stuff isn't a big deal, right? Like, this guy's talking about entrepreneurship. My stuff isn't a big deal. And you'll be surprised. The things that we think aren't big deals to us are a big deal to someone else. Oh, I can't do anything. All I can do is cook. You know how many of us struggle every day to cook, right?
Yeah.
Think about this. People build
All
entire
I do is
businesses
clean.
off of that skill.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Cleaning too, man.
I actually think if you were to say to yourself, all I can do is, and you finish that sentence, that's your thing right there. That's yours.
I love it. I love it. All right. So come on. There's someone here who is tempted not to do what you're suggesting. How much could they be wasting if they don't do this? Or if they do this, how much could they gain? What's the bottom line here? We want to kind of give people a number to kind of process.
Okay, so let me give you a number, right? $500 a month. $500 a month. So $6,000 a year. So $60,000 over the next 10 years. Now, you say, where did I get that number from? I believe everyone, I'm not saying everyone's going to start a business and make a whole thousands, millions of dollars. Now, do I want you to? Absolutely. But you have at least $500 of monthly income that you can generate from your business. $500 through that product that you can produce, through that service that you can do for someone else, through your expertise that you're giving away for free, right? Because I know someone's asking you, hey, can I pick your brain? Hey, can I pick your brain? Hey, can I pick your brain? And you're doing, yeah, let me give you my time. Let me give you my time. But imagine if you said, okay, I can charge this amount. I want to make $500. So maybe I sell one thing a month for $500. Maybe I sell 5 things a month for $100. But at least $500 is the number I'm going to give you that you're sitting on every month. And it doesn't mean that you have to go get a second job. It just means using the skills, the abilities that you have, you can generate that every month.
So true. I think that's doable for the vast majority of people. All right, so we're winding down. Come on. We want to give some calls to action, some shifts that people can make in their own lives to be a better steward of this particular resource that God has given us, the ability to create and generate income through entrepreneurial ventures. Is there a small shift that you might have where someone can just kind of nudge themselves in the right direction? And if you happen to have a super shift as well, give that to us too.
Sure. So I think the small shift for us is you are already serving others and you are already helping people. Now you need to shift even in their minds who you are. Like, I'm looking at starting a business. So here's shift number 1. If you want to figure out what your thing is, spend some time in private reflection. What am I good at? What's a problem I want to solve, etc. But try this shift. Ask people, what problem would you pay me to solve for you? That's a shift. By asking people, what problem would you pay me to solve for you? What would you pay me to do for you? It now begins to put into their minds, oh, you're creating something. So that's a small shift. And then if you already know what your thing is, this is the question you ask people. What's your biggest struggle with finances for you, Troy, or health for you if it's someone else, right? You're wanting to ask people, what's your struggle? That's a small shift because you're not charging them anything. They're not paying you anything, but you're simply figuring out what is the need that is around me that I can solve. That's really the small shift. What's the need around me that I can solve? Now, the second step, which is the bigger shift, is to put a price tag to it. So people tell you, my struggle is I don't have resources to parent my teenager, right? So what's your biggest struggle with parenting? I don't have resources. Okay. They're looking for some book resources, a workbook. Go put a template together and bring it back to them and offer it to people. Hey, creating this, it's going to be this. Would you like to buy as a pre-order? Now, that's a big shift because once we start putting dollar values to things, it stretches us, but it becomes real to you and the next person. And so I'm not even telling you go make it first. I'm telling you sell it first. And then once you sell it, once you can get sales, go create it. Now, I know that sounds a little crazy. That sounds crazy. But think about how many things you've bought that weren't already produced. That's the way you gauge the market. Now, that's a big shift, but I'll say this, Troy, you don't have a business if you got an LLC. You don't have, that's counter to popular opinion and probably what the Secretary of State would tell you. You don't have a business if you have a logo, if you have a nice Instagram or Facebook. You have a business when you start generating income. And that's why I'm telling you the big shift is start selling it, because that's the thing that's going to keep you growing your business, selling what you have.
Come on. This is really, really helpful. And I just want to commend you. I think the full story won't be told or known on this side of things, of history, as to your impact on the kingdom of God, helping people to minister and to monetize that ministry. I think that there's just going to be a lot of people who are just positively affected. There's so much abundance that you've been helping to create. And I just want to say thank you, man. Thank you for deciding to take this leap and for your ministry towards me and towards others whom you have helped, man. Thank you so much.
Hey, man, Troy, thank you. And I want to just commend you for what you're doing with this podcast and with helping people with your finances. I think, so many people are going to, their families will be blessed. And so I just want to just commend you and just pray blessings on you and your family as you continue to do this.
Hey, thanks a lot, man. You've heard it directly from the business coach's mouth, Kymone Hinds. We thank you again for being on. And we ask for our audience, be the best steward that you can as we seek to make shifts towards a better life. We'll catch y'all next time.